chapter 7. From there he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, of Syro-Phoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee in the region of Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers in his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, "be open." And immediately his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. They were astonished beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." It was a bright winter morning. The sun was beaming and reflecting off of the snow that was covering the roofs of the nice houses along the street and the luxury cars that were in the driveways. It looked like a picture from a Norman Rockwell painting, or perhaps from Home Alone before everything went haywire. Except for the suspicious-looking man driving the Lexus. He was kind of out of place in the neighborhood, and when the officer saw him, he knew that something strange had to be going on. Because after all, an African-American man shouldn't be driving a Lexus in a nice neighborhood. He just didn't belong there. And so the officer pulled him over, as the police like to do, said, "You know why I pulled you over?" As if it's somehow going to elicit this huge confession from him. "Yeah, I know. It didn't work. But he did say, the driver that is, he did say, yeah, I know I did. DWOTW. Cop looked at him. He said, "What the heck is that?" He said, "Driving while other than white." Cop didn't appreciate that very much. Officer asked him to step out of the car. He wanted to search the car and make sure there was nothing inside of it. Not that he had any reason for a search nor seizure, not that he saw the handle of a gun sticking out of the glove box, or maybe a little paper bag or a plastic bag sticking out from under the seat with suspicious-looking white powder. There was nothing like that. This crime was being black in a nice car, in a nice neighborhood. Well, that particular African-American gentleman not only refused to get out of the car, but rubbed a little egg in the face of the officer as he explained, "Not only, officer, is this my car, but see that nice house at the end of the street on the corner? That's my house. My wife and kids are in there waiting for me." See, this gentleman graduated from Northwestern University, where he played defensive back, was drafted by the Chargers, and after a short career there, finished his graduate work, became a nuclear physicist, and is now in charge of the 17 nuclear power plants east of the Mississippi. This man is also one of Weston's football coaches. And as Weston, in their last game, after the other team scored a touchdown, they were kicking the extra point, and he got to the ball before the kicker did and knocked it off the tee, but he took a boot in the back of the hand, where he kicked his hand instead of the ball. So the coach was putting a knee pad on his hand just to protect it when he wanted to cut it. And one of the coaches asked him, his name is Rosie, as we call him, Roosevelt, said, "Do you have a knife to cut this to fit his hand better?" And he says, "No." He said, black folk get shot by cops when we carry knives. I laughed along with them. But it really wasn't funny when you think about it. It's pretty sad, really, that people have to go through that just because they look, quote-unquote, different than somebody else. But when we think about it ourselves, I wonder how we would have been in this situation. Perhaps not with Rosie, but what if it was an African-American teenager in a hoodie in a beat-up car driving through the neighborhood blasting rap music? Would we not look and wonder what this guy is doing in the neighborhood? Wouldn't we think that maybe, where's the cops when you need them, because there's obviously something going on here? It's okay. It's hard to say out loud, it's hard to admit, but there's times when we all feel that way. But see, it's not just us. We take our example from Jesus. Jesus is supposed to be our example, our teacher. So it's pretty bad when even Jesus, God incarnate himself, is throwing out racial slurs. I don't know what brought this woman to Jesus. We do know that her daughter was afflicted by a demon, that she was supposedly possessed. But it took a lot of courage for the woman to do it. You see, when you read this text, we're missing a whole bunch of stuff. When you read one snippet from the text, it kind of cuts off the narrative. It makes it choppy because we don't remember what came before or what's going to come afterward. If you recall, Jesus had been with the disciples and he taught them that it's not what you put in your mouth, it's what comes out of your mouth that defiles. And then Jesus decided to go to the other side. He didn't just go to the other side of the tracks. He went to the place where the folks who live on the other side of the tracks came from. And Jesus went over there, maybe for a little R&R, maybe to teach some lessons, who knows. But this woman, who was not only a Syrophoenician woman, she was not only of a class of people that the Jews very much looked down on, she was not only a foreigner, she was not only from a group of people who the Jews hated because they tried to prevent the Jews from taking their God-given land back in the time of David. No, she was also a woman. She went down and bowed down to Jesus and said, "Please heal my daughter." That had to take a whole lot of humility for her to go to her oppressor and to get down on her knees and say, "Please help me." And I don't know what she expected him to say. She'd heard that this man was a healer, that he was a kind and gentle man. Maybe she was expecting that he would say something loving and, "Oh, it is done, go in peace." But instead, what does he do? He says, "Woman, what I have is for the Jews. I don't take the children's food and give it to dogs like you." But this woman, she wasn't going to go away easily. No, the love of her daughter had brought her this far, and she wasn't going to give up. It was kind of like Jacob wrestling with the angel of God, and he said, "I am not going to let you go until you bless me." And that's what the woman said to Jesus. "I am not going to leave this place until you do for me whatever I have asked of you, because I know that you can do it, and you are not going to send me away. Call me a dog, call me whatever you want. But even the dogs get to catch the scraps that fall from the children's food off the table." I wonder if Jesus inside was clapping. I wonder if he was like, "Yes." I wonder if he had some contempt. "Who the heck are you, woman, to talk to me this way?" Maybe this whole thing was Jesus doing because he wanted to teach the disciples a lesson. See, if you say mean things, it hurts people. So don't do it. It's not what you take in, it's what you put out. Maybe it was for her sake. We will never know. But we do know that that woman, at that moment, understood something. Whether it was what was intended or not, Jesus taught her a valuable lesson. He said, "Go, what you have asked has been done, and the demon has left your daughter." At that time, they believed in the supernatural. Right? It was part of their worldview. It was not a big deal to be possessed by a demon. It It wasn't a big exorcist type of thing. It was a normal thing. But it also had other meanings. It meant that somebody was afflicted by society, maybe bullied, maybe put down, maybe had slurs thrown at them, maybe being called a dog. Who knows what was done to this girl to make her feel less than human, that made her want to lay in that bed and not get up. Whatever it was that held her down, call it a demon, or call it being kicked in the side and spit at. But Jesus taught this woman, what you just did with me, you stood up for yourself. You showed that you are nothing less than a human being made in the image of God. You go home and you tell your daughter, you teach her the same. You teach her that she is nothing less than fearfully, beautifully, and wonderfully made. And in that act of empowerment, Jesus was able to teach this woman something that would last much longer than merely him snapping his fingers or waving his hand and casting out this demon. He taught her to walk through this world with her head held high and never to feel any less of herself, and to carry on that message to her daughter. Now, if the story ended there, it would be very powerful. We could walk away from that and say, yeah, go Jesus, you rock, man. But it doesn't stop there. Because as he's heading out of Tyre, going through Sidon, and maybe heading back home, who knows where he's going, but he runs into this man who's deaf and mute. He has apparently a speech impediment. Now, we can assume that the guy really couldn't hear, really couldn't speak, but when we think about it, in light of what just happened, I think there might be a little bit more to the story. Now, we could be grossed out by Jesus sticking his finger in his ear and pretty much putting spit in his mouth. But when Jesus did it, he looked up to heaven and he sighed, as if to say, my God, when will this end? When will these people stop oppressing and torturing one another? When will they just stand by as one another are downtrodden, treated like animals, treated like slaves? When is it going to end? And then Jesus opened the man's mouth, Ephphatha. His ears and his mouth were open. No more see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. No, he gave this man a voice. And he said, no longer will you walk around seeing injustices and pretending like they never happened. From today, when you see somebody like the Syrophoenician woman, when she's down on the ground on her knees, you will grab her by the arm and you will pick her up and you will look her in the eye and you will tell her that she matters. Jesus taught this man the same lesson that we are taught every day, still today. We have a voice, and we have to use it. Amen.